Chris Scalzo here with
Matt Howell.
And on this episode of The First Run, Matt, we're going to discuss Edgar Wright's Baby Driver. Now, it's no secret that you and I are big fans of Edgar Wright's work, and we had a discussion earlier this year. Will Baby Driver be the film that finally breaks Edgar Wright in a good way? Because he's had a run of what we think are fantastic movies, but he's never really blown up in the States. He's kind of got a bit of a cult following. So will Baby Driver turn that tide? We're also going to talk about XX, the all-female driven horror anthology film. And then to correspond with Baby Driver, Matt and I are going to discuss what we think are our 5 favorite film soundtrack compilations. But first, let's hear a clip from Baby Driver. All right, Matt. So we've been talking about Baby Driver for a while. I think one of our most anticipated films of the year, I'd have to say. But let's go back to our initial question, Matty. Is Baby Driver, is it the one? Is Edgar Wright now going to blow up and be one of the go-to directors everybody wants to work with? Is this film really that good? Or do you kind of just miss the Hasselon? Damn it, I used to know how to say that. The Good Days with Shaun of the Dead.
Geez, I don't know. I as much as I enjoyed this movie and as much as I like Edgar Wright's movies, I always feel like they're kind of a niche thing. At best, I could see him becoming like a Tarantino type director. I don't see this necessarily breaking him through, but I think it's going to still allow him to keep making the type of movies that he wants to make, which I think is the best we can hope for.
Fair enough. So, Matt, why don't you tell the kids at home, though, what's Baby Driver about? Let's give them a little background, too, while we're at it.
Sure. So essentially it's about a gang of bank thieves who's run by Kevin Spacey. And the characters, they switch in and out, but they're always, the getaway driver is always a young man named Baby, or nicknamed Baby, played by Ansel Engelcourt, if I'm saying that correctly.
Sure.
I think this is just going to be an episode of us butchering names this whole time.
Ansel Elgort. Yeah, Elgort. Maybe the T silent, Elgort.
Elgort, yes. There you go. And essentially, it's the whole conceit is that everything is set to music. He's always listening to music because he has tinnitus, like our friend William Shatner. And he basically does everything that he does is based to this kind of soundtrack. And the whole film is just set up to highlight that music. And it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it does really feel like this film was built from Edgar Wright's playlists up, right? That's he found the songs and then he just made the film around that. And it's really detailed where there are scenes, particularly the action scenes, that actually are choreographed with the music. Particularly like gunshots will go with snare hits on a drum or something to that effect, right? It's really that intertwined, the film. I got to tell you, Matt, for me, so this is the best film of the year for me so far.
Oh yeah, definitely, hands down.
I found it exhilarating. It's basically an action adventure musical, and it's easily the most fun I've had at the cinema this year, no doubt about that. It's just so full of life. It's exuberantly in love with what it's doing, right? And I felt like, and some of what I've been reading online is that people say it's basically it's his love letter to not just cinema, but movie people like me who enjoy these type of films. This film it's just everything I'm looking for in a movie. I think it's a perfect film. I do. And I feel like it was almost made for me. I found no faults. I found no weaknesses in this thing. The acting is all strong throughout. Ansel Elgort is great. Spacey. I mean, everybody. Hamm, Fox. It's interesting to be actually really kind of scared of John Hamm for once. But still, I could not find any faults in this thing, Matt. I absolutely adored it. What about you?
Yeah, I loved it. I think I struggle with whether this is Edgar Wright's best movie, but it very well could be. It very well could be. It was interesting. I watched some of the interviews after I went and saw the film. I watched some of the interviews of John Hamm and the principals making, talking about the creation of the film, and it was interesting that Hamm said that it was Edgar Wright had this thing choreographed down to the second. Like they had to like close car doors and take steps in time because he knew that it was going to be playing with this music that was going to be going with it. Which that attention to detail is insane, but but the end product is incredible. And guys, listen, just because Chris said it's a movie made for people like him, don't let that turn you off. This is a movie that anybody can enjoy. It is so much fun. Now, I don't think it's necessarily flawless. The only thing was, and this may be sacrilege to say, towards the end, as the climax gun, after they have the final bank robbery or whatever, and it kind of progresses from that, it seemed to go a little long a little bit, and the kind of, I don't know, it just wasn't quite as strong for me as the preceding 3/4 of the film, but it's still fantastic. I'll probably end up going to see this again tomorrow because I have nothing to do on July 4th, and I just really want to see it again because it was so much fun.
Yeah, I think this too is the first film this year that I absolutely have to see again in the theaters. I saw it in the Dolby Theater here too, so it was absolutely an incredible experience. And I'm with you. I can't wait to see it again, and I can't think of another film this year that I've had that same reaction to.
Interesting note, though. This is Edgar Wright's first true, pure, only Edgar Wright film where he created it, he wrote it, he directed it. Because Scott Pilgrim's based on a comic book. He wrote the Cornetto trilogy with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. But this one is his baby. This is the first film that's all him. And I never really thought about it that way, and it was very interesting to see. And apparently this thing is actually based on a commercial that he did that I cannot find online. I'm looking for it, but he basically did a short with the same premise: a getaway driver who drives to music. And I want to find it, but I have not been able to so far. Yeah,
I heard that too. He was on Comedy Bang Bang the other week, and with him and John Hamm both. And they were talking about that, as well as the fact that, this is like he's been focused, or the whole concept, like you said, he did this like 22 years ago with that commercial, and it's been gestating in him the entire time. And another thing too, I found out that he directed another movie called A Fistful of Fingers, which I want to see. It's the first thing he ever did, there was a funny part of the interview with Scott Aukerman where he's talking about it, and he always says that people always assume Shaun of the Dead is the first film he ever directed, and he just never corrects anybody. I think partly because he knows Fingers is not that good. So
he doesn't want to go
so you directed like 5 films or something. He goes, yeah, that's right. That's right.
That's funny.
That's funny.
And the soundtrack of this is just, we're going to talk about it later, but the soundtrack was fantastic from beginning to end, and it was incredible.
Yeah, no, it is. For me right now, that is the thing you need to see in the cinema right now. It is that good. It is fantastic. For me, to answer my own question to you originally, I do think that this is going to push him over. This will be his biggest, I think, box office success. So like I'm looking at his oeuvre right now, right? And like Shaun of the Dead, 13.5 million. Hot Fuzz, 23.7. Scott Pilgrim, 31.5. Doing
Well,
just
he's
his
already made more than
directorial
that.
efforts.
I mean, box
World's
office
End,
mode of the weekend.
33.5.
Yeah, it's 20. It's like 30,000 or 30,000, 30 million already.
Yeah, 30.1 right now, I guess, going off of Rotten Tomatoes. So, but you feel I think this film is such an artistic statement that I think it's one of those things that people are now I think he's always, like you said, been more of a cult genre guy. And maybe he'll still maintain that. Maybe he will have that kind of Tarantino thing. But I think he's going to attract now more people that will want to work with him. This is a guy I think who's progressed with every film he's made. Prior to this, I thought The World's End was the best film. Maybe not as enjoyable as Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz, but still just a better film. This, though, everything comes together, Matt. It is, I think it's perfect. I absolutely adored it. So, anything else? You want to give us your grade?
Yeah, I'm going to give this an A-. I'm going to give it just a little bit because of the way it kind of lagged for me at the end. But I guess, when I watch it again, we'll see if I reserve the right to change my grade. And the only thing I have to say about this, it's a shame, because as we get into award bait season towards the end of the year, and this has been so far back in the summer, I guarantee this will probably be in our top list, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where this actually finally ends up after we fall in love with all of our artistic statements at the end of the year. But this is pretty good.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the elusive A+ on this, which we never really give out.
Have we ever given out an A+? I don't think so.
I don't know. So, but I think I'm going to do it. I really enjoyed it that much. It is.
Wow.
I think it's going to end up in the first run canon, along with like Drive and Black Dynamite, that type of thing. So.
I like it. Yeah, I like how you Black Dynamite's great, but I like how you threw that into the canon.
Well, I think I realized it this morning too that I don't push that film enough. So I'm thinking about just closing every episode with watch Black Dynamite. I think out of all the films we've talked about, I think that is the most criminally underseen. Is BD.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's very true.
So, all right, if you had a chance to see Baby Driver, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Matt, coming up on Blu-ray and DVD, because it's July 4th coming up, there's really nothing else coming. So I'm going to tell you about some other stuff that we missed over our break while I was moving. The Power Rangers movie, Matt, was released on Blu-ray. Did you have any interest in seeing this? This film is well past our childhood, so I never watched the show.
Yeah, neither did I. I was in high school when that came out, and I remember my little brother watching it, and I was like, "Ew, this is terrible." So we're too old for that. So I have no nostalgia and had no interest in seeing it.
So it had some deleted alternate and extended scenes, as well as some outtakes and some commentary by the director and writer. A film we did do for the show, Life, with a little bait and switch with Ryan Reynolds, with Jake Gyllenhaal as well, is being released on Blu-ray, some deleted scenes. The Belko Experiment. Did you see Belko?
I did see the Belko Experiment.
All right.
Yeah, I saw it, yeah.
So that's getting released as well with some deleted scenes. The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which is something I really want to check out. That's supposed to be quite good, about there's an autopsy but on this dead woman, but then something supernaturally weird happens. I don't know. I heard it's pretty good, so I'm hoping to catch up with that. Criterion has got back they lost, I think it was out of print for a while, but they now released a Blu-ray of Straw Dogs, Sam Peckinpah's controversial film with Dustin Hoffman. If you haven't seen Straw Dogs, it's a weird, unsettling sit. The remake does not do it justice at all. I mean, there's a scene in the original that is just, it just sets the tone for the film. You're not really quite sure what Peckinpah is saying, because at one point you think he's glorifying the violence, and then maybe at another point he's condemning you for watching it. It's a weird film. If you've ever seen Peckinpah's original Straw Dogs, includes an all new 4K digital transfer, as well as a whole bunch of other featurettes. And they are also giving us, that's Criterion, they gave us The Lodger, one of Hitchcock's earliest films as well. It's his third. It's a brand new 2K digital restoration with a new score. It includes Downhill, director Hitchcock's 1927 feature film starring Ivor Novello, and another 2K digital restoration with a new piano score as well. I've never seen The Lodger. I am a huge Hitchcock fan. The Criterion sale, Matt, I believe at Barnes & Noble is happening right now. So this may be a good opportunity to pick that up. Terrence Malick's latest, Song to Song. From what I haven't seen this one yet, Matt. I think the last Malick film I saw was Tree of Life. And from what I understand, he's gotten weirder and weirder. There's like Night of the Cups and now Song to Song, where big-time actors still want to work with him. Rooney Mara, Ryan Gosling, Natalie Portman, Michael Fassbender are all in this film. But I guess they're getting more and more esoteric. I don't know. In fact, I think it's so crazy, I'm not quite sure I know what esoteric means. And then finally, your straight-to-DVD pick of the week, Matt. I want to repeat that. Your straight-to-DVD pick of the week is Chips. John Baker, played by Dax Shepard, and Frank Poncherello by Michael Pena, have just joined the California Highway Patrol in LA, but for different reasons. Baker is a beaten-up former pro motorbiker trying to put his life and marriage back together. Poncherello is a cocky undercover federal agent investigating a multi-million-dollar heist that may be an inside job inside Chip. That's right. I have such disdain for this film, Matt, that I think it should have been a straight-to-DVD film.
Wow, that's pretty hardcore.
I haven't even seen it. I just remember seeing like 2 or 3 different trailers of this thing, and it just being, it's all penis jokes and homophobia jokes, and I have a you know who's not crossed the Tatum line? Is Dax Shepard.
Yeah, and it's a shame too because I like Michael Pena. He's good.
Oh, me too. I think Pena's great, but no, absolutely not.
Yeah. And I like Kristen Bell too. I mean, it's just a shame.
There's got to be something rewarding with Dax, right? Because he's married to Ms. Bell.
Right.
Maybe he has some really horrible dirt on her. I don't know, Matt. What should we be streaming?
All right, so I've got a trio again. I'm going with 3 things. So in honor of America's birthday, I think you should watch a really stupid action movie where we blow stuff up across the globe. So I'm going to go with Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which is available on Amazon Prime. It's the latest version of or the latest entry, I should say, in the Mission Impossible series. Not as good as Ghost Protocol, I don't think, but it's still a really enjoyable action movie that gets even more ridiculous with every entry that they do.
I would agree.
And then, in honor of our friend Edgar Wright, I looked for some of his other films, and you can watch 2/3 of the Cornetto trilogy depending on what services you subscribe to. If you're a subscriber on Hulu, you can watch Shaun of the Dead if you have never seen that, his pastiche or his kind of zombie horror comedy that kind of put him on the map. And then I think my personal favorite, at least because it's the most fun to me, I think, Hot Fuzz is available on Netflix, which is, kind of a send-up of kind of super serious action movies and dark doings in a small town. They're both really funny. They're both a lot of fun. So if you haven't seen them, you should check them out.
They're great. They're good. Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, those are 2. I love those films too, obviously. All right. Let's move on then, Matt. Let's take another break and hear a clip from the horror anthology XX. Matt, what's in the box? So we have 4 films in this horror anthology, all directed by women, including a really nice and creepy framing device with stop motion animation, which does usually creep me out. So well done there. So Matt, XX, we have 4 short stories, right? We have first The Box, where we have a young boy who is on a train and there's a weird guy next to him and he's got a present. He goes, "Oh, what's in your box?" And he shows him what's in the box. And he then all of a sudden refuses to eat. and things go crazy from there. Then you have the birthday party. What happens when Pops comes home and kicks it, but you still have to get that birthday party on. You have Don't Fall, which I think is the most straightforward horror, right, out of all of them, where a bunch of kids go stay at a Howard Johnson's. No, they're in a what would you call it? Is it a Native American spirit place where? Yeah. Well, anyway, one of the party gets possessed and tries to kill everybody, and then finally, her own living son is Damien, teenage years. So first off, Matt, what's in the box? I'm curious what your opinion is. What's in the box?
What is in the box?
Does it matter what's in the box?
It really doesn't matter what's in the box. Maybe it's just he got an existential look at the void, and he decided that life was pointless, and he just decided to go from there. Because it's one of those things. You know what this kind of reminded me of? It's like in Martyrs, because he goes and like whispers what's in the box to people in his family, and then they stop eating and everything like that. Like in Martyrs, where the secret is you don't know what it is, but once they hear it, life has no meaning anymore. So I don't know. Who knows what's in the box? I don't think it really matters.
It doesn't. It's a MacGuffin. I agree entirely. Did you have a favorite out of the four? No.
I liked. I think the best made one was Her Only Living Son. That was directed by Karen Kusama, who did The Invitation, which we enjoyed quite a bit. So I think it's the most. It's the creepiest. It's the kind of the most cohesive. I think it's the most well done. I really wasn't a fan of St. Vincent's entry with the birthday party. I just thought it was tonally just didn't fit.
I didn't balance the comedy and the horror, I think, very well at all.
I agree with you entirely. I mean, this is, unfortunately, this suffers from the same disease that almost every horror anthology we see is that most of these things are a mixed bag, and a lot of them just don't stick. But at least this continues a trend, at least for, at least there's one pretty good one in it, which I guess is the most you can hope for in most horror anthologies, whereas we've watched some where none of them were good. So I guess there's at least that. I wouldn't say that this is, not to say that the VHS films are really that good, but the ones that work, the segments that work in those films really work, whereas this is good, but I wouldn't put it into Trick or Treat or any of those kind of more ones that we look back a little bit more fondly on.
I don't know. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I think I enjoyed it more than you did. I thought the birthday party, maybe not as easily successful of the four. I still thought it was weird and still somewhat entertaining. Yeah. I enjoyed Don't Fall because, as I said, it was the most straightforward kind of horror film. Your more traditional monster attacks type thing.
Sure.
I really enjoyed The Box because it is so cryptic and unsettling. And there's a lot more kind of existential horror and uneasiness throughout that film. Her Only Living Son, though, is I think I agree with you that is the best of the four. And interesting. But I think one of the key things about it is that these are all from the female perspective. These are all four directed by women. And I think there's a noticeable difference. I think that there is a certain, especially with the final one, with Her Only Living Son, there's a certain, I don't know how to describe it, but emotional attachment or there's a certain depth to it that I think that perhaps maybe just a woman could really have provided us for that. So I don't know. It was interesting. An interesting experiment. I'm glad we watched it. I think I enjoyed it more than you. I think I'm going to go in B- on this. I thought it was pretty good. So
yeah, I've kind of been vacillating between. I was trying to decide if I wanted to give it a B- or a C+, and I guess maybe the way I've been speaking about it, you would think it's more C+, but I think I'm going to go with B- too. It's still a pretty good horror anthology.
Okay.
Which is a rarity, if we're being honest.
That's true. That's very true. That is very true. All right. So if you had a chance to see XX, shoot us an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt, I know we keep talking about Raw, which we have to see at some point. There's a bunch of other stuff too that's been hitting Netflix. They've been having a good run, I think, lately. So we'll have to see what we're going to end up with next week. Either way, let's keep the train rolling and let's talk about what we think are the 5 best film soundtrack compilations or compilation soundtracks. Is that a better way to put it?
Okay, sure.
I have absolutely no idea. So anyway, let's hear a clip from a film, for me, that didn't quite make the cut. So I should clarify too. That Spinal Tap clip, not that it didn't make the cut, it doesn't apply because it's in a compilation of other people's music, right? So it was just more trying to find a fun clip involving movies that focus around music. So inevitably, just a big failure. Matt, speaking of Spinal Tap, have you caught up with Better Call Saul yet? This the season finale.
Yes, I have. Yes.
Is there any way you can think of that Michael McKean does not win an Emmy for that? He is absolutely fantastic in that show.
If there's any justice, he would. Yeah, he is. I mean, everybody's great in that show, but yeah, he's really put his A game on this season for sure. And you know what? Spoiler alert! Put your earmuffs on. I don't know if we'll be seeing him again. So it's either now or never if he doesn't win. You know. So.
I can't, again, I have no idea what's going to happen. I can't believe, too, they just renewed it for another season like a week ago, which blows my mind.
That does blow my mind. You would think that Vince Gilligan, with what he did with Breaking Bad and how much it put AMC's stuff on the map, that they would give him carte blanche to kind of just tell the story he wants to tell. So I'm hoping that if he's not sure he's going to get a 5th season or however long he needs to tell the story, that he at least wraps up what he needs to wrap up next season, because it would really suck if there was some kind of cliffhanger or it wasn't resolved.
I thought he had
even though we know how
for 5. Well, sure. Yeah, we'll see. All right, Matt. So go ahead. Why don't you start us off this week? What do you think? And again, this is a movie soundtrack that's a compilation of other people's music. So in honor of Baby Driver.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and full disclosure. I think one of these things on the list doesn't fit necessarily that criteria completely, but I don't care. I'm going to keep it on there. So my number 5 is when this came out. I'm not a fan of country, but when this came out, this was just kind of a breath of fresh air for all of us filthy hipsters back in the early 2000s. This is the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack, full of kind of old spirituals and Americana. There are some original recordings on it, obviously. The version of Man of Constant Sorrow, that was kind of a minor hit. Is a new recording, but overall it's a fantastic kind of dose of kind of that old style music from like the 30s and in the country. And it's really something you don't hear a lot of, and it's really a good primer for that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, honorable mention for me. It didn't quite make the cut, partly because of that. I think a few of the songs on there are originals by the Soggy Bottom Boys. So not quite legit.
Well, it's a traditional song. It's a traditional song. It's just they recorded their own version.
Fair. That's why it was an honorable mention. My number 5 is a film that I probably saw when I was really young, but it helped spark my interest in this type of music, which when I was younger was called oldies. When now the stuff I listen to is what's on Big D 103, right? That's the stuff now that may be considered oldies, but it's American Graffiti. Which had all those great songs from the 50s, early 60s maybe too. But anyway, that Dion and the Belmonts, the Shirelles, all that stuff that I absolutely adore was sparked from American Graffiti. So a fantastic soundtrack if you've never heard it, and a great film. George Lucas, right? He directed that, right? That was his first film he directed. So, and there you go.
It was.
So yeah. That's it. American Graffiti is my 5.
Okay, so my number 4 is a cheat. And Chris, I make up my own rules for these things, so this is also a cheat. I couldn't decide between these 2 soundtracks, so I'm putting them both in here and as a number 4. It's Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. I couldn't decide which one I liked better. So I guess if you put a gun to my head, appropriate for both of those films, I would probably go with Pulp Fiction. But it's kind of like this. They're both these kind of AM gold stuff from the 70s that I love that kind of stuff, and I think those 2 soundtracks really kicked it off for me. And there's plenty more in the honorable mentions. I had tried to kind of keep it as limited as possible to how much the 70s would influence my decisions. But I think if you had those as a 1-2 punch double album, I think you should definitely treat them that way. And they've got really cool little vignettes from the movies, which you can't go wrong with.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah, I think generally speaking, I think Tarantino is considered the master of the compilation soundtrack, right? I can't really think of anybody else that does a better job. Maybe until now, I don't know, but Yeah. I mean, he's not just, not only did he bring back John Travolta, but he brought back Al Green to people as well, you know, with Let's Stay Together.
That's true.
So I agree with you entirely. My number 4 then is Swingers.
Oh, okay.
This was there's moments in my life growing up that were just kind of pivotal where everything kind of changed for me. One is when I saw Clerks. I saw it in the theater at Cinema City in Hartford while it was still there. Remember the Cinema City? In fact, before they tore it down, I would drive by it, Matt, once in a while just to see if it was still up. And if it had been torn down, I was going to try and sneak in and grab like a brick, because Cinema City was a big part of my growth when it came to just loving films. Like I saw Brick there, just lots of stuff. But anyway, Swingers was one of those films. And Swingers is what kind of got me more into jazz, but mostly swing, all right, if you've seen the film. And it's one of the ultimate kind of guys movies. You have Jon Favreau, you have Vince Vaughn, both actors' careers really being launched by this film. And of course, Heather Graham. And it is so much fun, but so is that soundtrack is a ton of fun. And it's responsible for the resurgence of swing in this country, though granted it had a short shelf life, right? But still, that film and that soundtrack is what really started all of that and sparked my deep love for all of that music as well. I absolutely, to this day, I still listen to that soundtrack. It's so good.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you have bowling shirts? Did you have tiki stuff?
I sure did. I still have a couple actually.
There you go.
I'll tell you, man, there's 2 periods that's basically it. As I love that kind of swing time, that thing. Yeah, that 20s, 30s though, swing, jazz, that's my thing. When guys wore fedoras and suits, I mean, I think fashion-wise, I think was the peak of this country. Now, granted, you have to take out all the racism and sexism and all the other stuff, but style-wise, that was it. And then the Greasers, the 50s, the James Deans and all that kind of stuff too. Those are my 2 periods that I love the most. So there you go, Swingers, number 4.
Well, I mean, every motion is an earthquake.
How dare you? Gesture.
All right, so
thank you very much. Every gesture.
Gesture. Excuse me. Couldn't remember it. I really should get a shirt. I'm gonna print you a shirt. I'm gonna print you a shirt.
If we were to do a T-shirt for the first run, that would be on the front or the back. Every gesture is an earthquake. And Batman vs Superman is a B film.
Yes, right.
That would have to be a good one too.
Yes. All right. So my number 3. This is going to be another controversial choice here. This is another filthy hipster album, and I really don't like Zach Braff at all, but I am going to go with this Garden State soundtrack. It has some weak moments. I'm not a huge fan of Coldplay, but it did introduce me to Nick Drake. I didn't really know who he was before this came out, and obviously the Shins change your life when you sit there and listen to it. And this is something that kind of introduced all that kind of guitar, strum and drum, kind of low-key indie rock music to a lot of people. And I think the soundtrack has way more legs than the film does. People are still talking about the soundtrack, whereas nobody's talking about the film for good reason.
I haven't seen that in a long time either. I like Garden State a lot, but you're right. That soundtrack is great. It's an honorable mention for me. And that is the film, that soundtrack is what sparked me to start listening to the Shins. And I absolutely love James Mercer and the Shins now. They're one of my favorite bands. I just saw them last month down here in Tampa. Fantastic show. So I have to give you, that's a good pick. Honorable mention though for me, but still good. My number 3 then is the soundtrack to Michael Winterbottom's 24-Hour Party People, which is a story of Factory Records. A great film starring Steve Coogan if you haven't seen it. But all that stuff with Joy Division, right? And then eventually, oh dear God, I'm blanking on the band afterwards. Thank you, New Order. But that whole 80s new wave kind of thing that started, that Factory Records helped put out, and that soundtrack is fantastic for that film. It really hits all the high points from that movement. From there, I got the Factory box set, which is basically a compendium of everything that Factory Records did. But a fantastic film and maybe even better soundtrack. So 24-Hour Party People, number 3.
All right. So my number 2, I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I'm listening to it. I've been listening to it for days. I'm putting the Baby Driver soundtrack as my number 2. It's
my number 2 as well.
It's so good from top to bottom. Just the cuts and man, I mean, you know, I haven't listened to John Spencer Blues Explosion in forever. I actually have that album, and when that came on, I was like, holy crap, I haven't listened to that forever. You know, Barry White and his Velvet Sex voice. I mean, the whole thing just works for me. I mean, you know, I haven't bought it, and I probably will buy it. But I have been listening to it. It is available on Spotify right now, where you can listen to it, you know, randomly, which is not ideal, but it does work in a pinch. So, yeah, I'm very much enjoying Baby Driver, even though it's incredibly recent, but it is that good.
I agree. It's my number 2 as well. I got it. I purchased it from iTunes the night I got home from after watching that screening, and it is fantastic, and it's got a little something for everybody. It is so much fun, and it's fantastic. I agree with you as well. It's my number 2. So Baby Driver. I can't really say anything more. So what?
All right. So this is where Chris gets mad at me because I broke the rules of this again. I broke the rules. I've broken it several times for this thing. But I'm gonna go with the other Edgar Wright film that actually music plays a huge role in. I'm gonna go with the Scott Pilgrim versus the World soundtrack. That is a soundtrack that I have been listening to. You know, I listen to it probably a couple times a month, you know, for years. Now, again, this is a cheat because a lot of the music, it's written especially for the film. You know, you have bands like Beck and Metric performing these films, but those songs are just so much fun and they're so good and they're just all in my wheelhouse of the kind of things that I like. Even the little 8-bit version of Threshold that's at the end of the soundtrack, it works for me completely. And as much as I love the Baby Driver soundtrack, I have a special place in my heart for the Scott Pilgrim soundtrack.
It's fair. Fine. Such a cheater. Fine, whatever. My number 1 then is Pulp Fiction. It was a lot higher on your list, but still. I must have spun this thing I don't know how many times when it first came out, and I still have an affection for it and still listen to it to this day. I probably, honestly, I probably listen to 24-Hour Party People and Swingers more now than I do Pulp Fiction, but I still think the best just compilation of songs is probably Pulp Fiction. You have Reservoir Dogs. I would almost go the Kill Bill soundtracks maybe too better than Reservoir Dogs.
Really?
So I love those as well. I mean, I feel like I have to give to Tarantino because he's been doing it so well for so long. So, but my number 1 is Pulp Fiction. Yeah, solid from beginning to end. And like you say, you have the clips inserted in throughout the soundtrack as well. I've made my own kind of soundtracks and movie soundtracks over the years, and I actually have this like 2 big playlists on one's movie scores, right? Another one, actually there's 3. There's movie scores, there's songs from movies, like compilations like this, and then I have a truncated movie scores one. But the big movie scores one, Matt, that's like hundreds of songs, has movie clips filtered in through all these other different movies throughout it as well, which of course was, I think, for me, inspired by Tarantino's doing that for me originally with Pulp Fiction. I understand he did it with Reservoir Dogs soundtrack as well, yes, but I confess I saw Pulp Fiction before I saw Reservoir Dogs. So.
Oh, okay. So there you go.
There you go. Any honorable mentions for you?
Yeah, so I'm going to put singles on there. Cameron Crowe, who's also very good at it, just because, again, I've been for a certain age. This kind of fits a kind of certain period in your life full of grunge and Seattle music, which you can think what you want about it, but it is a pretty good representation of what that is. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which I'm a huge fan of that movie, and I think I like the soundtrack so much because there's so much Johnny Depp pretending to be Hunter S. Thompson, and it's hilarious in between all the songs, and it just adds so much to the soundtrack. It's a lot of fun. And then again, my ode to the 70s, it would be a 1-2 punch of Almost Famous and Boogie Nights, whereas Almost Famous is kind of the rock god kind of arena stuff, whereas Boogie Nights is the disco side of the 70s for the most part. And it's I think those are, you take that and probably the other 2, AM Gold, Reservoir Dogs, and Pulp Fiction, you could really have a good a survey of the 70s of what you want to listen to. Yeah,
that's a good point. So I'm shocked by this one omission from you, the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack.
Yeah. I when you initially suggested this, I was going to put Guardians of the Galaxy somewhere on there, and then I completely forgot about it after I made my list. So I will add that as an honorable mention very late to the game.
I think one of mine here that actually fits your criterion for your cheats would be Rocky IV. A lot of those songs are made specifically for that soundtrack. Garden State, Lost in Translation, Train Spotting, Boogie Nights, as you said before, Oh Brother Rat Thou, Rushmore. Same another cheat would be Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah.
And then if you're looking for just a good tour of your adult-oriented rock through the decades, you would go with Forrest Gump. I think you can't really go wrong with that soundtrack either.
That is a pretty good soundtrack. Again, another better soundtrack than a movie, that's for sure.
I haven't seen Forrest in I don't know how long. I wonder if it still holds up for me at all. I know I really liked it when I was younger. And then as I got older, and I think about the fact that if you reverse the genders of Forrest and Jenny,
it's problematic.
Is that love scene really? What do you think about that?
Yeah, let's just think. We'll leave you guys to ponder that. Send us an email.
So yeah, not just that, but also, did we miss any? What are your favorite compilation soundtracks? Just an email at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Matt, next week, Sofia Coppola's The Beguiled. I am very excited to check this out. And then what else we're going to see is Up in the Air. And after that, the biggie, Matt, Spider-Man Homecoming. I know you're excited, looking forward to that one. So I haven't seen Preacher yet. Have you seen Preacher at all? Was it third episode ran last night? Did it run last night?
Yeah, I haven't watched any of the episodes yet. I'm a bad fan.
We'll have to catch up with that. And then a week after that, we have War for the Planet of the Apes, which is also supposed to be stellar. So this is a hell of a run. City of A Ghost Story is out as well at some point. So next week, who knows when it goes wide though. So, but yeah, we got a lot to talk about coming up. I'm very excited about it. In the interim, shoot us an email as always at feedback@thefirstrun.com. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. We're everywhere. Just do a search for The First Run. Eventually, you'll find us. As always, Matt, watch Black Dynamite. And now let's take an extended break, and we'll see you all soon. Take care. You can say bye, Matt. That's all right. Never mind. Don't worry about it. Too late. Oh, and I forgot. Rest in peace, Michael Nyqvist. Yeah, Michael Nyqvist. We lost you too soon. One of the greatest deliveries in cinematic history. And let's go out with a clip from John Wick.